Pawdcast, Everything Dogs. I'm your host, Daniel Stucker. My co-host today is Miss Brett Bauerschmidt.
What's going on?
Hey, today we are going to be talking about how to keep your dog safe in summer. We're entering the summer months and it is blistering hot. And so we want to make sure you guys take care of your dogs and know about the temperature you're walking your dogs on, being in the car, things to keep your dogs cool in summer. So we're going to kick it off and try to have all these good tips for you guys, and hopefully you'll enjoy everything and you get a little tidbit from it. What do you think?
You know, I think it's a great topic because right now in Atlanta, it is balls hot, pardon my French, but you walk outside, it's high 90s, and the humidity combined. So it's hot for us. I can't imagine what it's like for the pups.
You know, you trust me, I know, because, you know, when I'm boarding dogs, you got to keep them in the air conditioning. Unfortunately, I have air conditioning and heat in my kennels and stuff, because otherwise it's just people that leave their dogs outside in this, that's a form of abuse.
Totally.
So I think what we're going to start out with, though, well, let's talk about, with it being so sweltering hot, when the best time to walk your dog and why. How's that sound?
It sounds good because I know usually, you know, you have your routine with your pup when you walk them. I know for myself, I usually go out at least 3 times a day, but it's that center of the daytime that gets to be a little excruciating with the heat and the pavement. So I usually like to go first thing in the morning when they wake up in the routine, when the sun's still down, and then obviously do a nice long walk in the evening after the sun has gone down at setting, a little more cool. Obviously just depends on what's going on for that day, but just trying to avoid
Bingo,
the height.
bingo. Yeah, you nailed it.
Yeah.
Just for reference for people, like when it's 100, well, we're just going to take 100 because it's an even number.
Right.
When it's 100 degrees outside, the asphalt is usually 140, 150 or more. If it's directly in the sun, it can be a lot more. So the rule of thumb is, if you can't walk on it with your bare feet, your dog can't walk on it with its paws.
Right.
And you want to be aware of that, because your feet can burn, your dog's paws can burn, makes it very uncomfortable, obviously. Concrete's a little bit cooler, but it's still around 125 degrees. So you're best off if you're walking in that type of heat. Obviously the mornings and the evenings are better, but if you are out there, try to make sure you're on grassy ground, or, you know, the dirt grounds, something where there's no heat that's going to, you know, really injure your dog. And so that's something you really, really want to be aware of.
Yeah. So one thing that I always do, I always go down and put my palm down, check it, you know, just make sure if I'm not wearing flip-flops, and I always check first, but, you know, if we're going to asphalt, just to make sure before they step on it. And you know, what's interesting is I was listening to this, this other show, and this, one was talking about actually, dogs in the heat in the pavement, where they could slowly, gradually, if they get accustomed, where they actually thicken their paw, so it builds up against where they can actually have more resistance and walk on it. But that comes with over time when they're kind of acclimated.
I think that, like out west in states like Arizona and stuff, obviously that's going to be more, but we have, like here in the Georgia area, we actually really have 4 seasons, as short as they may be, but our summers are sweltering hot. And so we're going to focus on our half the country, the Southeast, you know, or, you know, we have the Texas of the world over here a little bit west of us. And of course you've got the Floridas a little south of us and so forth. And our summers right now, it's an early summer for us, in fact.
Yeah.
And there's already been, unfortunately, on the news, some injuries with, you know, people leaving their dogs in their car. Just like, I don't know how you forget your dog or your baby in the car, but it seems to happen occasionally.
It happens a lot now. I'll tell you what, because I had a rental car last week, and as soon as the car was off, boom, 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 little sign in the front of the console saying, check your rear seat. I'm like, people really forget.
Yeah. What a great idea to add into a car, though.
I know.
You know?
Yeah.
So we're going to get back on topic, because otherwise her and I are just going to gab for you. So when we're talking about that, so the best time is the morning or the evening, when it's much cooler. You know, it's not as humid either. The dog's not going to have all that heat coming at it from, you know, the ground up, because obviously, remember, once it reflects off the ground too, your dog's much closer to the ground than you are too. So it's getting a double whammy from up top and down below. And so that can be, you know, really dangerous. So if you are going to walk, if you can, walk them early in the morning before the temperature rises, and get your exercise in the best you can. And another tip for this too is, if when you're doing this stuff, if you can get a really good workout in for your dog in the morning like that, they're going to sleep through the hottest part of the day.
Right.
You know, which is obviously they're not going to have all that pent up energy and stuff. And especially because of heat, if you do have to go out during the middle of the day, they're not going to last but 2 or 3 minutes, and they're going to be zonked.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's always nice. Always my dogs always come in the middle of the day and they just find the coolest spot in the house. They always have that little tile area. They just like
Yeah.
lay down that cools on the body. If you don't have tiles, you can also get a cooling mat, which is another tool that you can use. But I agree. Definitely exhaust them in the morning so they can
Well, yeah, we're
rest.
going to get into the tools of that in a minute. We should talk about the
Hmm.
evening walks then too.
Hmm.
Evening walks. So you're best walking before 11 and then after 6. So, from those hours in between there, those are kind of the dangerous hours that we want to avoid if possible. I mean, potty breaks are different, but actually going out, walking, playing, that's really, really hot. And it's really not a healthy scenario for your dog. Even if there is shade, even if there is water, when it's this type of heat, it can wear out a dog really quick. In my background too, when we used to do a lot of the military dogs and the police dogs too. In this kind of heat, we didn't really have the choice. We had to train, but we always had misters going. We were hosing the dogs to keep them cool, and they're only doing 5 to 8 minute work, and
Wow.
that's it.
I
And
believe it.
so that's how dangerous it is. And so just I can't stress to you enough the safety of being careful during the mid part of the day.
Were there a lot of dogs when you were doing that that would have any kind of like overheating when
We
you're
were
out
fortunate
training?
because we kept really good eyes on that, and then of course the kennels were all air conditioned and misted and all that kind of stuff. So it was a good scenario for them, but again, you can't be too cold. So when they go out in the hot, it's draining either. So there's kind of that happy medium, which
Right.
we're going to get into those type of temperatures too when we get into some of the other things today. But yeah, you gotta be careful with extreme heat changes too, from heat to cold to hold the heat and all that.
Oh yeah.
So for me personally, I'm a night guy. I love during summer. I actually walk my own personal dogs in the evening because, first of all, it's just more peaceful, and for me it's more of a zen thing to walk my animals and to you know we do a little bit of training, but my training usually I like to do in the morning. But the evenings is just pure enjoyment,
Yeah.
and so evenings is it's cooler, it's nice out. We just go do it. We walk, we can walk neighborhoods, we can walk through the woods, we can do all those things, and it makes it much more enjoyable. Even if it is sweltering during the day, you're going to get some relief in the evenings.
Oh yeah. That's totally my Zen moment.
Yeah. Well, that's why we all have dogs, because they bring us our Zen moments. Um, my big thing is, we're talking about this. Let's talk about some of the tools or equipment that can make your dog much safer during summer, especially if you might have to go out during, the daytime, or if hey, it's the weekend, we're going to go hike in the mountains and you want to make sure your dog doesn't overheat.
Oh yeah. No.
And again, if you have your dog outdoors too, like you have a big backyard and you're like, hey, my dog loves to be in the backyard. If your dog is going to be in the backyard, make sure it has, access to shade. If possible, they have very inexpensive misting fans where you just put this fan on top of a bucket and it mists for the dog.
Yeah. Those are cool. I've seen those.
Yeah, there's cooling mats, and there's actually cooling harnesses too. These are just a few of the tools. And, if you're out in your yard and you've got a misting fan and some shade, your dog's going to be good for the most part. Not that you say to leave it out there and all that, but a cooling mat is really good too if you're going to be on the go. And so, and when you take your break, you can pop out a cooling mat, let your dog relax a little bit, make his core temperature go down. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think with that's a great way, the cooling mat, like you said, if you are on the go. But I think the two things that are crucial that I personally do when I'm on the go is I pack up a thermos with ice water in it, and then I also pack a collapsible bowl, just so we have that for backup, whether if we're out on a walk, if we're just out during the day doing stuff, but always because yeah, they're constantly wanting to cool down and drink off.
And that's another good thing. So when it's so hot like this, you have to be very careful that your dogs don't drink or eat a lot and then go play before or after in the heat, because that can lead to some very serious issues, health issues, such as bloat. And you want to be really careful, especially during summer. You have to be aware of bloat. You have to be aware of heat stroke. There's a lot of different things that can happen to your dog in these extreme temperatures. You also want to be able to have, the eye to notice what's going on. Like if a dog's, possibly have heat stroke, what's something that's going to tip you off?
Well, immediately the first thing is if they're panting heavily. If they do that, I notice like their drool will be a little more thick, be drooling a lot more. A lot of times I'll check if it gets a little bit extreme. I'll check their tongue. If their tongue starts to curl, I'll notice that this heat stroke started to happen. Or if you look at their gums, like the color of their gums, if they're
Yep.
either like a dark purple or blue, or if they go to like a lighter, like a white color,
Yep.
those are all signs to kind of look out for any kind of heat stroke. But definitely panting and excessive panting is the very first sign.
And like a lot of you, like I have a very high drive dog, and like one of my females, in fact, you could throw her the Kong in 150-degree heat and she'll go till she collapses. So just because your dog wants to keep continuing to play and doing these things, you have to be able to read the signs, because she's not, or he or she might not be able to do it because all they do, that's their whole life is, playing or whatever, and they enjoy it so much. So you're going to have to be your dog's advocate and say, hey, that's not good for you. This is how I'm going to protect you, and if it does happen, some of the things that you want to know, if you do run into, you think your dog might be overheating, well, you're not going to want to drop them in an ice tub, because that's too much of a shock to their system. If you have a hose available, you can start to lightly hose and mist them down. You can go in the house, you can get an ice pack and wrap it in a towel and start to do things like that. But you don't want to go from extreme temperatures to extreme temperatures because of the shock. What you want to do is do gradual and make sure they're okay. Don't let them drink lots of water. You can give them, a sip or two just to get some hydration. But these are imperative. And obviously, if any of this is to the point where it's worrying you, go to the vet immediately. The vet's always your best choice, but some of these things are things to help you along if you get stuck in a scenario like this.
Yeah, and one thing you can do too is that because they technically like they sweat from their mouth, that's where all the heat's coming from. So if you have a fan, say you have them on a cooling mat, you don't necessarily want to put the fan where it's going directly towards their face, towards their mouth. If you maybe put it towards the side, so it kind of blows the hot breath going opposite way or behind them, that's also a good way to help.
It's like a glancing blow. Yeah. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Kind of like, nobody wants to sit. Well, some people do, but most people don't sit directly in front of a fan and get blasted in their face.
I do when I was a kid.
Yeah. Well, everybody did when they're a kid.
Yeah.
Then you talk into it, but that's another, that's
Luke,
another
I am
episode.
your father.
Yeah. So if you have the fan, again, depending on the part of the country you live in, I'm really big on these misting systems. I have misting systems in my outdoor kennels too. And I love them because they can hook to a hose or they can hook to buckets, and you can set the mist for whatever you want. And then it's just another safety measure if you are out and about and your dog's in a kennel and it's not quite that hot, but you want to make sure. So there's lots of tools out there. And again, when I go on hikes,
you go on hikes?
I was going to say not very often, but when I go on hikes, like, if we go to, sometimes we'll go to the lake on the weekend, and, dogs have their life preservers and they get nice and cool. But sometimes it's nice just to go up, especially in Georgia. Here we have Stone Mountain, we have Blue Ridge Mountains. Georgia has a lot of mountains in the northern part. And we go up there, and there's, again, I don't use the cooling vest as a harness, but it's a cooling harness. Yeah. Not that I use the harness act part of it, because you know how I feel about that. But yeah, I don't have any problem slapping on there for, they're not very expensive. And here's the key. You don't have to spend a lot of money to keep your dog safe, and some common sense goes a long way too.
Common sense. Yes. I wish there was more of that in the world today, but yeah.
Yeah. We are lacking on that a little bit in a lot of aspects. Let's talk about like the car scenario here, because this is a big one.
Yes.
And, I'm fortunate enough that not only is I have a vehicle set up for dogs that has not only air conditioning, but also has fans too, has emergency fans, emergency windows, all that kind of stuff. Most people aren't going to have that. And why would you? Okay. But if you do take your dog places, which there's nothing wrong with doing that. I think it's great. I love taking my dogs everywhere. Just make sure, you can't stop, shut your car off and roll down the window. It's still going to, if it's 80 degrees out, inside the car is going to be 120, 130, 140 degrees within 10 minutes.
Even if it's an overcast day.
That could make it worse because it's insulating the heat.
Exactly.
And so it doesn't take a lot of time to heat up your car inside. So if you're going to do that, keep your windows up, keep your air conditioning on, keep your car locked, put a sign that says, my dog is in air conditioning, listening to its favorite CD, so don't break my window.
Exactly.
And it's funny, but people actually do that. We've seen a sign where someone said, please don't break my window. The air is on. My dog's enjoying his CD. Which is funny and cute. But the only thing with that, you have to make sure though, you still want to check on your animal, because sometimes cars can shut off, something can happen, and that's the worst thing you want to do. Last year they had an officer his canine, his fan system shut down in his car and his canine perished. And so that was, so just because you have these safety issues doesn't mean you can forget about it and walk away.
That's
So you have
heartbreaking.
to, yeah, it's devastating. So even though you're doing all the correct tools, you still want to check on your animals.
Yeah, no, totally. And like you said, there are a lot of cars now. Like my friend has this Tesla. I think it's just like the sedan model, and it actually there's it goes into dog mode. So he would use that where
Well, you shocked me when you said you had friends, but that's a cackle. So the new Teslas have a dog mode.
yes, yes. See, because so he has two young dogs, and so he's always out and about with them, and so that was one cool thing. He's like, yeah, it has this cool feature. It plays music. It actually says turning into dog mode, and then the fans go in the back and blow it around, and the windows kind of tint and stuff like that, so people don't freak out. And I think there's something that says something, so when people are coming by, they don't like, oh my gosh, there's a dog trapped in
You
the
gotta
car.
love Elon Musk, man. He guy thinks of everything.
I
That man,
know.
and how cool is that? All vehicles should have something like that. I know a lot of the new vehicles have stuff like check your back seat,
Yeah.
things like
Don't
that. When
forget
you,
your kid in the back.
yeah, don't forget your kid in the back because that happens quite a bit.
I know.
Which are those are really cool tools, and it's great that society is kind of thinking along the lines of animal lovers these days too.
Yeah, no, exactly. And so my car doesn't have dog mode, but it can still run. And I can lock it. Um, and it'll keep going. Because some of the other cars that I've had, like rental cars, like you can't, it won't lock.
Right.
So I always want to make sure they're safe. But that's the one thing I always have to know. I always First I always make sure I know the neighborhood or I know the area, because if it's an area I don't feel safe in or I don't know, I'm not going to leave them. You know what I mean? And or if it's not that hot out or I'm putting the windows down, I just always make sure I'm aware of their surroundings and where I am, because there is a lot of car theft here too, and I've heard of stories of people having their cars taken with the dogs in them.
Yeah, that's
So
unfortunately common too. Then they try to ransom the dog back too.
yeah, fucked
Yeah.
up.
The nice part about like some of the vehicles, such as my own, is that basically I have the fob. So even if you get into a locked vehicle, you can't get it out of park.
Yeah.
And so the safety features on vehicles nowadays are pretty darn nice when it comes to that.
Right. And you have a Fiat too, right? Or a smart car?
Yeah, I have like
Yeah.
3 or 4 I keep in my back pocket. So we'll talk about that
Yes.
another time. So, now this is kind of off the beaten subject, but when it comes to that, I have, which I'm going to start putting some pictures up. I have a Polaris slingshot, and I had a custom kennel put in there so I can take my dog everywhere, but there's a lot of heat. So I had to put cooling pads down. I put a misting system in. I got him a
In the
cooling
slingshot?
in the slingshot.
Does it have a little sidecar?
It is, well, it's inside because it's a seat, but yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, so I'll have to show you guys some pictures of that. It's really, really cool.
that's awesome.
It's in the
Now you
fog
have to
that
get you gotta get goggles
he's
and all
got
this stuff.
goggles. He's got it all. So, but
That's
again,
awesome.
I didn't even realize, like, even now because it's so hot, we did a couple times. I'm like, it's just too hot. And so
Yeah.
unfortunately we're not going to ride until, more probably towards fall will be more of our riding because it's just too damn hot right now with all the heat coming off the road and stuff.
Oh yeah.
But again, here's me, advocate for my dog, thinking about his safety first and foremost. And again, just because he wants to go, I'm not going to do it because I'm looking out for his best interest.
Yeah, no, totally.
Yeah.
It's another thing that you can do. When I had an Akita years ago, because it would get so hot, even just doing extra brushing just to kind of take off the extra layer of
That's
fur.
such a great point. We didn't even talk about, this is just for normal dogs. When you have these breeds like with these thick furs, like
Huskies, and
like
all
the
that.
Huskies, the Shepherds, the Burmese mountain dogs, all that. And again, we have a lot of those down here, and again, people don't like to shave those dogs because it looks goofy. And I get it, but man, it would help out so much during the summer months because most people aren't going to do that because they don't believe in it. But again, my dog's health and safety is my priority.
Yep.
So, fortunately for me, my dogs all have relatively short hair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, their fur sheds anyways when the seasons change. But just doing that extra kind of, maybe it's like a routine you get into every other night or something like that during the summer. Just kind of keep shedding.
Yeah. Help get rid of that excess fur to keep them cooler. That makes complete sense.
Yeah, that's why I have to shave my legs in the summertime. Keep it cool.
Well, looks like you missed. So
True.
anyhow, but yeah, the heat is no joke. And that's why, we're making jokes and we're having fun with this, but seriously, it's the time of year where you have to be extremely, you know, safe with your animal, because it only takes 10 minutes and you could lose your animal.
Yeah.
And obviously we don't want that to happen. So, um, some of the tips, like I said, that you can do is always have shade available for your dog. Always have water available in small quantities. Don't feed your dog or let them drink too much water and go out and play in the heat immediately. Or when they get back in, same thing. You don't want to do any of that because that can cause issues. You want to have, if possible, a cooling mat, especially if you're just hanging out on your patio or whatever, on your deck or your front yard, just for them to lay on something cool. It's going to make them much more enjoyable,
And then just look
misting.
out for those signs. The misters,
Yeah, the misters are great
fans.
too. Again, and a lot, and this most of the stuff is very inexpensive.
Mhm.
You know, um, so again, it's just how much effort and time you want to put into it. I know everybody's watching here's a dog lover, but they're like, it just sounds like it's a lot of work. It's in the scheme of things, it's not work at all if you can enjoy your dog that much more and give your dog that much more time to enjoy himself outside, especially because like right now, most people are keeping their dogs in probably 18 hours a day. You
Oh
know,
yeah. But it's the same thing if you think about it, like during the winter seasons. I know a lot of people that will buy their dogs clothing or sweaters or hoodies and stuff like that, which isn't expensive, but if they're going outside and it's cold weather, I know obviously, that's not for everybody, but the same fact of
or
like,
anybody actually, but yeah, let's put some boots on our dog too.
hey, I saw a canine was actually putting on little booties and because the heat from the pavement because he was
well, that
working.
would make more sense.
Yeah.
I mean, if there's an actual reason for it, yeah, I get it. But just too many people use stuff as fashion statements, or they want to make their dog do this all the time. So
Do what?
this all the
That's
time.
his dance moves, by
Yeah,
the
my
way.
dance moves.
Don't get too intimidated.
So, well, what else do you think about this heat?
Well, so one thing I really wanted to kind of touch base on because I know this has been an issue for my pups, and I think it would also kind of help with our viewers is since we are right around the corner for Fourth of July,
Wow.
that is a very it could be a very traumatizing time for dogs just because it's the sound, it's the smell, that they're not acquainted to if they're not familiar with fireworks. But there's been a lot of situations where dogs they react out of fear and they'll get loose and they'll escape because they don't know
Do
what's
you know
going on.
there's more loose dogs become lost on the 4th of July
Yep, it's
that weekend than the rest of the year combined.
oh
And
completely.
so, again, since we're talking about heat and celebratory things, and that's obviously right in the middle of summer,
Yeah,
um, if you don't have your pet microchipped, it's a wise investment, to do that. A lot of people, like when they keep their dogs at home, don't put collars on their dogs, especially around those type of holidays. Make sure your dog has an identification collar on. Make sure it fits properly. Make sure you have all the tools necessary. So if your dog somehow gets lost or whatever, there's going to be identifying markers. So you'll be able to get your dog back and, or identify it if something, you know, someone picks them up or what have you, you
yeah,
never want to think worst case scenario, but it's really scary because, so many dogs are lost during the 4th of July. The shelters are all already overrun. And so, unfortunately, most shelters aren't even accepting dogs except to euthanize them right now, at least down in the Southeast here for the most part. And it's a scary scenario. Other things you can do during the 4th is, if you can, keep your dogs in a secure location. Make sure, like if you have crates, make sure they're in a crate, especially during the fireworks. Crate them, keep them comfortable, like a den-like environment so they feel safer. Some of the littler dogs I know, like thunder coats and some of those
yeah.
things.
I usually give calming treats. I make sure they're not home alone. If I am out, which is not often, but if I am,
Yeah.
make sure that they're not alone. But those anxiety vests have really done great wonders. But also like the calming aids, like the hemp tinctures or
Yeah.
treats like that just kind of make them less anxious.
Yeah. So there's definitely some natural remedies that'll help with that. Obviously having them in a safe environment, even playing some music, light music, not like you want to play death metal, but more like classical or just something relaxing for
Like
them.
Yanni.
Yanni, yeah, Yanni's great. Something that, again, because a lot of people like to go out for the 4th of July and leave their dogs at home. And so I would definitely keep them, if possible, indoors in, a crate if possible, in a nice secured environment. So if something does affect them negatively, they have no place to go. They'll just probably just hunker down, so to speak.
Yeah. And it's not just the 4th of July. Like you said, it's like the weekend because people are doing fireworks, getting ready for 4th of July. They're doing it afterwards with leftovers. People are doing them illegally in like the neighborhood. So like it's kind of that time period where like everyone's in my household is very anxious. So I have to kind of take all
Yeah.
these extra precautions.
It's funny, as some of my dogs have gotten older, they were fine with everything from fireworks to gunshots and all that. And now as they've gotten older, it's interesting to watch how that's all changed. And like, one of my dogs in particular, fireworks or anything loud starts happening, he goes right into the bathroom and crawls around behind the toilet, kind of
Yeah,
like to hide and stuff. That's just heart wrenching. You know what I mean?
I
And
know.
so no matter what you do, so I put him in a crate with his, he's got a nice thick cushy bed and he crawls in, and I throw a shirt in there with my scent on it, and he just wants to be hidden. So I let him hide,
Yeah.
and it makes him feel better. And so, definitely, if possible, don't leave your dogs out during the fireworks if they're not directly under your supervision, because they could freak out and try to break out or escape or something of that nature. And anybody who's ever lost a pet or had a pet escape knows what a horrifying experience that is. And it's heart wrenching and it's just upsetting. And the, the feeling of not knowing is, it just eats at you, you know? And again, we're not trying to be negative, Nellies. What we're trying to do really is just, impart on you the importance of having preparation for the 4th and the holidays like that.
Yep. Just being aware, because I know a lot of people are gonna be out partying. You might forget or, you just kind of slip your mind what time, where the dog was or whatever
Yeah.
things happen. So definitely just kind of good to be aware and just so you kind of can go into the holiday with be more prepared.
Yeah.
Come,
It's amazing though. 4th of July happens every year, and it's kind of a pretty well-known fact about losing dogs. And yet people continue to do the same mistakes year after year after year. And you're not being an advocate for your dog if you're not putting your dog's safety first, just like you'd put your child's safety first.
oh yeah.
You know what I mean? It's a celebration. It's a celebrate, but take care of your dogs in between. Like, again, go out, have a good time, but make sure your dogs are secure. If you're at a place with your dogs, the priority is to make sure your dog is secure first and foremost, and then enjoying the experience with them, not in spite of them.
My thoughts exactly. I mean,
Well,
they are like our kids. Like that's the first thing I do. I make sure they eat, they're taken care of before I do,
yeah,
So I
absolutely.
totally agree.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But yeah, so those are just some summer tips and on, from asphalt and car rides to holidays to fireworks. Hopefully this was helpful for you guys. We'd love to have your comments and, like and subscribe. Let us know what your thoughts are. We'd love to talk about issues that affect you or that you're interested in, and so let us know. We would love to hear about it. Again, I'm Daniel Stuckert, the Paw Daddy.
And I am Brett Bauer, the co-host of Pod.
And we are signing out. We hope you guys enjoy your week. Take care.
Bye.
I hit the clock. I have no clue how long that was.
Nice.